All right, everyone, we should be live. Let's make sure that's actually the case. Over on Rumble, of course, where I have to wait a good 10-15 seconds, refresh the page. But I do see that Rumble Rants is working, so presumptively the video will indeed load. We've got all sorts of good shit to cover today. Of course, the Omnibus bill, the selling the United States down the river budget, as you can call it. Funding the government through September by throwing a bunch of money that we don't actually have to various foreign ventures, pork barrel plans of one sort or another. All sorts of insertions into that bill, of course, and we can't even fully analyze it. It's over 4,000 pages long. Nobody had the ability to read it in a timely manner. I liked the cope, actually. I'll just rant about this for a moment before I check Rumble. I loved the fact that they said, well, we dropped the bill actually days ago. You should have had time to read it by now. You basically, you lazy Congress people. You and your staffers didn't have time over the course of a single week to read more than 4,000 pages of legalese and digest exactly what every penny is for before voting on it. They voted it through anyway, I think now anyway. So, it's neither here nor there. $1.7 trillion, again, that we don't have. And that's just to keep the government open through September. The Republicans punting on the issue, they should have strangulated it and said, no, we're going to wait on a budget until we're, until the lame duck session's over. You've got a new House. We can renegotiate. We'll keep it open for the next month, and then we'll negotiate further. Parse it down by a couple $100 billion. That alone would have been a massive achievement. It's apparently more than Kevin McCarthy can deliver. We'll reload this tab and make sure we're live on Rumble. Yes, we're live. Hello, Rumblers. I see lots and lots of clanking there. By the way, the other day we did screw with Mike Sington's poll. He was asking whether you'd rather see Trump's tax returns, which we have, or Hunter's laptop contents, which we also have. In all honesty, we've got them both now. Of course, if you look at his audience, it's far left. Liberal, former NBC exec. So, you understand the kind of people following him. It was funny because he was bitching about it being, there was a coordinated campaign against his poll. Yes, only your fans should be the ones that are weighing in on the poll. If anyone else decides to share out your poll, it's a coordinated smear campaign or something like that. Thought that was very funny. Robot Trucker, do you think there existed advanced civilizations prior to the Ice Age? Yes, but keep in mind what advanced means when you're that far back in human history. You're effectively talking about something roughly akin to the Copper Age. Yes, I do believe that there were groups that were semi-sedentary, more organized than we typically associate with the Stone Age, and which had more technology. Much like, though, with the story of Atlantis, and people start talking about death rays and flying machines, that's like a latter-day steampunk readaptation of the original Egyptian story retold by the Greeks, in which you simply have a culture that was more advanced than its contemporaries. If you look at the island of Santorini, you see people with 3-story homes with full plumbing. For the time period, that was remarkably advanced. Yeah, they were the most advanced people arguably on the planet at the time. Culture got destroyed. They probably made use of geothermal energy to some extent, at least for cooking purposes and heating their homes, of course. That's advanced. For the time period, people in Greece were living in one-room mud huts. People in Egypt generally living in sand, mud brick buildings too. You did have megaliths. You had advanced culture going on, but for an entire society to have seemed to enjoy that level of sophistication, you can see the Minoans as well, roughly comparable, was quite an achievement. Anything prior to the Ice Age where people were able to stack stones one on top of the other and create a roof eventually over it would have been considered remarkably sophisticated. Styx Hexenclaws, Merry Styxmas, and a Styxy New Year. Well, thank you. Merry Christmas to you as well. Although we've got a few days to wait until Santa Claus comes down the chimney. If you don't have a chimney, he'll squeeze his way through a crack in the bricks or something like that. Dude's relentless. Roberto Gonzalez, as a resident of Maricopa County, Arizona, I'm extremely embarrassed about our disastrous voting policies. Third world countries are less corrupt. Yeah, we'll be talking about that, but we have to do that in a New Tech exclusive. We're still not allowed to question the election results, I think, on YouTube, even if there were questionable things going on, like 19-inch ballots being rescanned through a 20-inch screen or whatever the fuck was happening there. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Aaron Bennett, watching on my TV sticks, the next few years will be interesting. FBI and CIA should be disbanded for what they have done. The gaslighting by them is sinister and people will believe them. Agreed. Don't bother reforming them. Get rid of them entirely. Now, of course, we've got our first piece of news here. Congress releases spending bill to fund government through September. The Senate is expected to vote on the spending bill first, with at least 10 Republican votes needed to pass it and send it to the House. I believe they have already finalized this, if I remember correctly. Not 100% sure. Somebody can fact check me on that live. In this bill, which is $1.7 trillion, keeping in mind again, this is just to fund the fucking government through September, when they could do a stopgap measure for a few weeks, punt it past the lame duck session, and let the newly reformed Republican House decide to have a stab at maybe parsing it down to make it a little bit less bad. McConnell and the other Senate Republicans don't want to do that. Showing their membership in the corrupt uniparty, by the way, in the process, McConnell's getting dragged right now. You're talking about $858 billion in military spending alone through September. More than $772 billion for domestic programs for the remainder of the fiscal year that ends in September. Of course, a giant chunk of that military spending, $45 billion for Ukraine. Zelensky showing up to talk to Congress. It's funny because some people didn't give him a standing ovation. They're cast off as traitors. This is basically like the equivalent of being the only leftoid in Congress in to the 2000s when George W. said, let's go and bomb the Iraqis. They're the ones that'll be remembered fondly by history, but they won't be remembered fondly in the contemporary sense. This always happens. Yeah, McConnell has become a Ukraine firster. So has Dan Crenshaw, which I warned you about repeatedly. The Spence Fencer, Athenians fought off Atlantis. Not that advanced. Well, I mean, if you're looking at Santorini's remains, they wouldn't have had a very large military. There wouldn't have been very many people there. And that story may be apocryphal. The idea of people from the sea probably involves an island, just to be clear. They may have invaded a neighbor. It's possible. Chris Deviney, there's a bunch of gun control and red flag law funding in the Omnibus. Yes, tied into the anti-gunnery of Cornyn, Romney, and others. They decided to allocate more funds for that. But that was already, they had already allocated the concept. They have to continue funding it, though, in order to keep the program going. They're trying to bribe states into passing red flag laws, basically. Fire down below. Randall Carlson explains in a video how the Egyptian pyramid is the exact same size of half the Earth from equator to North Pole, just a different scale. Interesting. I do know that the general consensus is that it represents a constellation, the Great Pyramid and its twins on either side. Reuters writes the Senate passed the spending bill on Tuesday. Oh, how lovely. Now it goes to the currently Dem-controlled House. They'll rubber stamp it. Biden will sign it. And we'll be sending tens of billions more to foreign countries that don't really need any money right now. Meanwhile, no allocation for the border. Trump had to fight tooth and nail for 2 years to get $5 billion to accomplish what he did at the southern border. Imagine what we could do with $45 billion. That'd be great. Half the problem is solved right there. But they don't want to solve the problem because it's a perennial issue and they love slave labor. Ozzy's Robots, Ukraine is the most gaslit war in history. Well, arguably the Vietnam War, I think, is more gaslit than that, but yeah, it's close. It's definitely in the top 10. So yeah, enjoy. We're spending $45 billion that we don't have to perpetuate more war at a time when there are homeless veterans and mentally ill people milling about and all sorts of other problems in our own country. But we're not allowed to be America first. That's Nazism. We're supposed to give money to literal Nazis instead. They're the good Nazis, though. They're the ones that are beyond question because they're killing the Ruskies. It's funny because nobody gives a pass to the actual Nazis back in the 40s, back when they were slaughtering a bunch of Soviets. No, those were the bad Nazis. These ones are the good ones. Eric writes, help me understand the beef Scott Adams has with you and fans. I enjoy both channels and don't see why he's so firm about cutting people out of his life. Just salty boomer nonsense? I don't know. I mean, I've thought about rating his live stream some more just for shits and giggles, but it's like, I don't know. I don't know what his problem is. Fire down below. I will message the Randall Carlson video on Twitter. Thank you. Yeah, let's give more money to the Ukrainians. You know, you're supposed to fund them. You know, tighten your belt. Turn off. The British are like, turn off your Christmas lights for a few hours. The other day they were doing this to celebrate, you know, Ukrainian victory or some shit. And people were ringing and saying, oh, and then turn off all your lights and all your heating and take cold showers and learn how to forage for wood to defend the Ukrainians. You need to learn to live with less. You know, Ukraine's not a NATO member. It's not a direct military ally of any NATO member. It's half a world away from the goddamn American continent, but let's give them more money. To be clear, and I will always point this out, I oppose the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I'm sorry for the Ukrainian people. I feel sad for them. They shouldn't be, you know, being fucked around with this way. But their government has banned certain religious materials or speakers rather, has banned opposition political parties, is clearly involved with embezzlement with regards to this money. You've got black marketeering of these weapons. You know that there are kickbacks back to the US government for this funding. What's the difference then? That one tin horn tyrant wants you to speak Russian and the other one wants you to speak Ukrainian? Because that's becoming the only main difference between the two. Mostly right. Balls McLongcock. Drennan, the Earth is over 4 billion years old. It's amazing that only now there's an advanced civilization. Yeah, exactly. We're not supposed to believe there was anything prior to the Ice Age other than uncouth and uncivilized proto-Homo sapiens and their Neanderthal counterparts. The Neanderthals being the ones that were more civilized, by the way. This is something that's been hidden as well. The Grizzly, do you believe that people will ever wake up to the rampant and odious authoritarian globalism, or is the layman doomed to be a sheep forever? I think more and more people are waking up, mainly because of economic concerns. You know, people vote with their wallet. This kitty has been really clingy today, by the way. Yeah, is it lap time? Look at my little lap cat. Look at this goofini. Anyway, getting distracted. Next news story, the FBI is gaslighting. Luke Rudkowski here posting this. This is a clip from Fox News, actually. So, yeah, you know, they're just referring to it verbatim, so there's no spin involved. This is when you know you're in an abusive relationship with your government. I go a little bit further. It's when you know that there's bullshit going on. Listen to this clip. And all of the links, by the way, that I cover today, they are in the description cross-platform on YouTube and on Rumble. Watch this. It's only 55 seconds, so it's, you know, it doesn't take very long. It doesn't take much time out of your day. You're watching me first, but then you can watch this really quickly afterwards. Just to be clear, right now you got to pay attention to the cat's asshole. It's basically an OnlyFans channel at this point for people who are into bestiality. Look at this clip. I analyzed it this morning. It doesn't focus on the internal emails, memos, etc., between the FBI and Twitter, or on, you know, Twitter itself. Doesn't focus on that. It doesn't even mention them. It doesn't mention the First Amendment free expression or even an appreciation thereof. All it does is say, look, our bureau did nothing wrong. You know, we investigated ourselves and we found no wrongdoing. And if you look into it any further, you are a conspiracy theorist. Every single time that a government bureau, a politician, and this happens very often, law enforcement, a business person, anytime a person completely ignores every bit of evidence, doesn't even talk about them in their rebuttal to a claim against them. You stole the cookie from the cookie jar, you stole the car, you stole the bar, you did something, you assaulted somebody. If you completely ignore the evidence and don't even bother to make a tacit defense with regards to the actual evidence that people have already seen, there's usually a reason for that. When you ignore that and you start bloviating about other people being conspiracy theorists or hateful or whatever you want to label them, it's because you're goddamn guilty. And that's exactly what the FBI is doing here. This is gaslighting. They are attempting to gaslight the population into silence by saying, if you look too far into the Twitter files, you're a conspiracy theorist. There's something wrong with you. Don't read the emails that we fucking sent Twitter over and over again. Don't look at the fact that we paid millions of dollars to Twitter's staff to censor people who were not engaged in any form of unlawful speech and for which we had no evidence that they were foreign agents. Don't worry about the fact that Twitter belatedly, after several years, refused initially to ban government-run bot accounts, even though botting is against their platform's rules. Don't look at any of these things. Don't look at their Slack messages. Don't look at at anything that happened there. Only look at the fact that we're calling you a conspiracy theorist if you care. And this is a tacit admission that they did wrong. They got caught with their hands in the cookie jar with chocolate dripping down their faces. And now they're gaslighting by saying you're a bad person if you notice the fact that they stole the cookies. That's basically what this boils down to. What we need is a full congressional investigation into what happened here. I hold out little hope that you'll end up getting one, unfortunately. Possible. I'm not going to hold my breath. Looking at Kevin McCarthy with his Ukrainian flag lapel and McConnell bitching about the need to support Ukraine. My constituents say it's the most important thing to them. Yeah, crime, the border, all of those things. Nobody gives a damn about them. Let's make more weapons and send them to Eastern Europe. I don't hold out a huge amount of hope for the Republicans actually doing their job. I think that they'll pivot to other issues and quietly retire this entirely. It's more than just an abusive relationship, though. Not much of a relationship. It's more like the FBI comes into your house randomly, fucks you in the ass, leaves you bleeding without lube, and then departs. And then they call you a conspiracy theorist if you complain. Mr. Wonderful, is Zelensky staying in his Florida mansion while on his laundering visit to the United States? Farah 2024. Oh, you've got to vote for the presidency, but she was born in the Netherlands, so she's not eligible. Probably smarter than the average politician. And yeah, I think that Zelensky probably is staying in a mansion somewhere, still wearing his shitty tracksuit. Null hypothesis. Ukraine is just another money laundering machine for corrupt politicians to funnel U.S. taxpayer money to their bank accounts. Agreed. Which is why we need to get their tax returns. You'll notice nobody's clamoring for Pelosi's tax returns, even though, unlike Trump, she actually made shit tons of money while in office on a relatively scant congressional salary. Darius Harvey, thank you for the $100, my man. The GOP in the Senate needs to be voted out, period. Agreed. I think everyone watching agrees now. People who vote for people like Mitch and Mitt need to decide if they are with or against freedom, because I can't for the life of me understand how people keep voting them in. Oh, and the RNC needs cleaning out too. Yeah, and Ronna McDaniels, Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, the Romneys, the Cornines, all of these people are losers, and they lose on purpose. The whole idea, let's say you're Mitch McConnell. Your butt's been wiped. You've got a perpetual job. Incumbents tend to be voted back in religiously. There's like a 1 in 100 chance you get voted out. So you know you've got job security. So what do? You know that money can be made out of thin air and will anyway. It's going to be used for a pork barrel project or bombing people or something anyway. So you found this really great grift. Ukraine's no longer in any danger of Russia overrunning their country because Ukraine has been pumped full of goddamn steroids by the West. All of the best and brightest sort of weapons that can be deployed are already there on the battlefield. Ukraine is kicking ass, supposedly, according to legacy media. We keep getting reports on how they're dragging Russian tanks off with tractors. They're destroying Russian MiG fighters and bombers, blowing them out of the sky, dozens of them sometimes in a single day. They're kicking ass. So why do we need to send them $45 billion? It's because a large proportion of that goes to two things. Zelensky, who will take his wife on another $40,000 shopping trip, I'm sure, when he gets back to Ukraine. That's number one. And U.S. Congress people and bureau heads and others. They'll get their 10%, or probably a bit more than that. The rest gets used to bomb people. War is very, very lucrative. There's nothing wrong with making money. Preferably you do it without mutilating children, but just saying. Josh Bacchus, what's more likely to happen first? 3-letter agency accountability or Elder Scrolls 6? Well, thankfully, Elder Scrolls 6. I am looking forward to that, just to be clear. Eric writes, are you open to the Silurian hypothesis? Don't like the name because Doctor Who has always been meh, but I do wonder if there were a sentient species before super advanced mouse, to which family do you think it would belong? I don't know what you mean by mouse in that particular thing. Silurian hypothesis. My own belief about the human timeline is that generally our understanding is correct. I just believe that it's entirely possible that there was a pre-diaspora Ice Age or pre-Ice Age group of humans that were more advanced than we see in the archaeological record. If it were anywhere near any mountainous areas, all of the evidence has been destroyed by glaciation. All you'd be left with is folk tales. You'd be left with oral history, herbal history. That too. Neanderthals did like their pipes, it seems. The fact that there are similar tales in cultures that are broadly spread across the world does indicate to me at least the possibility of a common origin. It's not necessarily the case. A lot of it's astronomical. Everyone looking up at the sky, they see the sun. They would have noticed that it moved in a relatively describable framework. They understood lunar cycles and the stars and things like that. But why is it that they all interpreted things so similarly when they could have potentially interpreted them differently? Of course, what you see as a constellation is completely malleable. Now, in the southern sky and in the northern sky, you see different things, yet you have similar folk tales. So it's always been a little bit of a mystery. It used to be people assumed this was because of the Great Flood. Around the time of Blavatsky, you get a little bit more nuance. Anishi Kihaku, do you think Illinois will ever be a swing state again? Is Chicago the #1 corrupt city in 100 years in the Western world, in your opinion? My first super chat, never catch you live. Google fought me over payment. Well, I thank you for the super chat. Illinois could become a swing state. And I don't know that Chicago is the most corrupt, but it's definitely on the top of the list. So it's up there. It's in the top 10. I think Detroit would be up there. St. Louis, D.C. D.C. would probably be the most corrupt. New York would give it a run for its money now. Pure blood, 100%. Good morning. What is the end game for these people? What is the reasoning besides for power? Why are they trying so hard to push all these crazy ideas and break the country in half? Isn't it better to keep the country together? Well, their butt's been wiped regardless. They don't really care what happens to the U.S. or any other nation because they don't have any national loyalty. They're globalists. They're people. They're citizens of the world. And not in the hippy-trippy John Lennon sense of, well, let's leave each other alone. Let's leave each other alone and stop bombing one another. Can't we have a Merry Christmas without a bunch of dead children all lying all around in the rice paddies and in the desert? That sounds great. It's utopian, but it's a good idea, at least on paper. Globalists love the dead children. Dead children make lots and lots of money, and that's really their god. That's the other thing. They're all a bunch of, they're not just anti-religious, they're anti-spiritual. If you think that they're occultists, you can go ahead and continue in your delusion. Deus Flex, it'd be just like how the U.S. armed and funded bin Laden and the Taliban during the 80s. The Nazi Ukrainians will get out of control, destabilize the region, and the shells of today will pretend they never supported them. Unfortunately, there is a chance that that is what will happen. Drennan, a bill should fit on one page. Sometimes, with a budget, if you're providing for 1,000 different things, it's understandable if it's longer. But isn't there some way to make it less than 4,000 fucking pages? If you get to the point where your nation needs a budget that's, 10 times the size of a novel, then maybe you can slim down a little bit. Smoking and joking. We have to end aid to Ukraine. Zelensky is bankrupting us. The American people need to wake up and call their state rep and demand an end to aid. Thankfully, after the new incarnation of the House, that might actually happen. I would say that's more likely than meaningful investigation into the FBI's role in censoring U.S. citizens on Twitter. The Patriot Chiro, did Biden's people steal Zelensky's luggage? Yeah, imagine Sam Brinton is still employed by them. He's like, oh, yes, I bet there's drugs in here and probably even better shit. Imagine what I'm going to make on the black market. The Great Scalzini, happy belated anniversary to the end of the Mayan calendar in the world on 12/21/2012. I remember that was the only scary thing about the future. That was fun. And I warned people at the time that doomsday was not there, and there were some people that claimed that it was. Thought that was very funny. Quite interesting. Ozzy's Robots, we should do a stream one day. I'm sure you've never had a guest that met Nixon, the Pope, Steven Tyler, hung out with Prince for a night, opened a museum, and settled a $1 billion case. Yeah, you can come aboard. That'd be cool. Mainly to talk about the fucking museum, though. Troy Neenan, blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne. Bara, will the big guy get his 10%? Probably not 10%, but he'll get a little bit of a kickback, I'm sure. Of course, even 1% of 45 billion is a pretty good payday. Fuck, I wish I had that much money. I'd build a comfy cottage and have a gigantic-ass garden. And then I'd build another one on another continent. The Agao faces. Hi, Sticks. A huge red flag as a Hispanic is a job post in Spanish with a no English requerido. 9 out of 10 are temp jobs. Slave labor with slave wages. That's why an open border benefits those corporations. Exactly. They want people to work under the table. Hey, no habla inglés. Yes, you can earn $10 an hour doing work that is dubious as far as its legality, even for workers' protection standards. Alan Smithy, can I get a shout out for ID Potato Farmer on Twitch? He's trying to grow his channel. Okay, I can't use Twitch because they banned me for spurious reasons, but ID Potato Farmer on Twitch, there's an official shout out. The Grizzly, do you think a recession or a depression is more likely for 23? Also, how will that affect the Dems' chances of getting the Oval Office? Do you think Trump is more likely to win the worse the economy gets? Yes, I do. Although it has to get demonstrably worse in order for that to have a huge impact, I think a deep recession is the most likely. Not a light recession, which is unfortunate. A deeper, thankfully, though, not a full-on depression, but a deep recession, like something like the crisis at the end of the 2000s, I think is possible. Skate Betty, the super chat Dohiki won't stop on 10.2. You'll get it later, but just the tip. I didn't know that. Victoria Winter, the Uniparty should all be sent to Guantanamo Bay. No, we should send them to a Siberian penal colony where it's not nice and warm. Guantanamo is too nice for those people. Drennan, of course there was intelligent life before mankind. Or read The Mountains of Madness. Yes, of course, the Elder Ones were here first. Ia Cthulhu Fatagan, or however you choose to pronounce it, it was never entirely fleshed out by Lovecraft. Next, 100 billion to Ukraine. That's in total. If you add the 45 billion that they're pledging now. This is Thomas Massey posting. That's more than 200 million this year from each congressional district. What would your congressman have done for your district with 200 million other than lining their pockets? There's lost in translation. How long will the kids in your district be paying interest on this debt? Oh, but that's the thing, Thomas Massey. They'll just inflate the currency. Don't worry about the debt. They'll just make more money. And this is why they don't really take this seriously or give a goddamn. There are people in the United States right now that are taking out credit cards to buy groceries. And they're still more fortunate than the people who are outright fucking homeless or living back with their relatives when they're already middle-aged because Bidenomics sucks dick, because the economy is effectively defunct. And that's happened to literally millions of people in the United States. As far as those taking out debt, it's possibly tens of millions of people. And some of these people are solidly middle class. Now, again, there are ways to shave down your expenditures. Maybe you cut out a couple of meals a week. Maybe you grow a bit of your own food. If you have the primary investment, it's one of the greatest things you can do. Maybe you do turn the heat down, whatever. You attempt to constrain the amount you're spending because you can't necessarily make more money. There are people taking out second jobs. They're taking out credit card debt. They're moving back in with relatives, which, I mean, there are worse things, but, you know, you got a 3-bedroom home and you got 7 people living in it. It can get a little bit crowded, just trust me. People shouldn't have to do this, not in a developed nation. This is not something that's necessary. It's entirely self-inflicted. Massey's correct. We're sending 45 billion big ones to another country, which is currently at war without being an ally of ours. It's not a NATO member. And we're ignoring the border, which you could build Trump's wall, the several hundred miles of retrofitting a new wall that were created. That was 5 billion. 45 billion, 9 times as much. Are you telling me that we can't at least secure the western half of the entire southern border for that total? It should be a no-brainer. I mean, it would actually be helpful. But that's why they don't want to pass it. They don't want to be helpful. Yeah, sending a bunch more Stinger missiles to Ukraine isn't helpful either. It's not going to help win the war. It's not like the Russians are randomly going to withdraw from Donbass or say, you know what, you've made your point. We're ceding Crimea back to you. You can join NATO and we have no problem with it. Yeah, that's really going to happen, dude. It's an embezzlement scheme at this point. You can see through it easily. Pure blood 100%. Forgot to ask, how are you doing handling being a father? I have 5 littles, 1 adopted, and I truly love it. 5 kids would be a bit much. Our daughter, minus the sleep issues that she has now, of course, she's at that particular age, generally is relatively easy. I'm liking it, of course. You know, babies are adorable. You know, you eat mushy food, and she, you know, reaches out for the cats, you know, because they're soft and fuzzy. It's very adorable. It's very, very comfy. But you do lose some sleep. You do lose some work time. You lose your concentration when you're trying to edit something. But I mean, it's par for the course. It comes with the territory. Everyone should try having a kid. Inishi Kihaku, what are your thoughts on the mathematical improbability of lunar eclipses occurring on a cosmic scale? Do you think it suggests contrivance of reality? No, lunar eclipses would make sense. One object is moving in front of the other and blocking light, or being blocked by light. I don't see that as particularly odd. Virgil Walker, Sticks, do you think the FBI paying Twitter to censor people will be taken before SCOTUS? It's possible, but the Republicans have to have balls first. Trump gave them at least one of their testicles back. They've half given it back away over the last months. The Natural Human, if they say it will be a recession, it will be a depression. No, because they're saying mild recession. I think it'll be deeper than that. I don't know that it will actually trigger a worldwide depression. And if it does, of course, we've got bigger fucking problems to talk about than them lying. Yuki of Sakudo. I work as a fraud investigator at a bank, and we have a group of Armenian gangsters that came across the southern border and set up a huge fraud ring in California and Texas. Ridiculous. I'd be interested in seeing any links you have about that, if it's public knowledge. Maybe we just get a really hot tip. Eric writes, almost had fallen asleep, work nights, before I heard the kitty ask for love. Please give her an extra pet and snuggle for me. Wishing you and family well. Yes, thank you, and well to yours as well. She gets petted all the time. She was in the thumbnail for, I think, all 3 morning videos. Yeah, what a snuggler. Sometimes she gets up here, she tries to make me bend forward like a subjugate, like a slave, so she can ride on my back. The Patriot Chiro, should we make sure that it's actually the case that the link in the description is archived? Of course. Of course you should. Mr. Wonderful, they wanted to screw us all over with a 6-page Green New Deal, but instead we got a 4,200-page, 1.7 trillion omnibus bill. Vote Trump, for God's sake. Yeah, omnibus budgeting happens under every presidency, including under Trump, but at least there was an attempt made. The Three-Eyed Raven, what do you say about the MSM claiming that Putin is vowing to launch Satan 2 in the coming weeks? Let him. You know, you can launch the missile without the nuclear payload, just to be clear. If he were crazy enough to launch a 35 megaton device into Ukraine, it would start World War III. I don't think there'd be any holding back. And then we get to play Fallout Real Life. Unfortunately, Rad-X doesn't actually exist, so... Shegasm, Blood Incarnation is a good band. Oh, Blood Incantation is a good band. The Great Scalzini. I feel like I asked this before, but are the kitties calm around the child, or do you need to keep an eye on them? They're very calm around her, actually. The other day, she managed to pet Farah. She then grabbed her a little bit too tightly, and I had to gently separate them. But the cat never lashed out. They're never aggressive, which is good. They're only aggressive towards each other. Lev Polyakov, good morning, Sticks. The sun's diameter is about 400 times larger than that of the moon, and the sun is also about 400 times further from the Earth. Interesting stuff. Could be a mathematical reason for that when you think about it. Pepe Payne over on Rumble. Afternoon, home skillet. Wondering if you and Adam Krigler can start a show together. Think y'all are in the same time area. Clankety clank, clank, clank. No, I'm just going to keep doing my normal live streams and not doing like a show thing. Like I was on Happy Homelands as co-host, but the problem is like, I called it quits there because I was like, well, it's hard for me because it's pushing like my energy level in the mid-afternoon. And poor Ramsey had to get up early in the morning to do his fucking show. It just, time-wise, it didn't work out. I think it's easier for me to be solo, at least now. Keith Sparbani, have you seen any stream Kerry election trial? Yes, I have. It'll be a New Tech exclusive tomorrow, I believe. Not a banned account. When Ukraine defeats Putin, can we divide Russia? They might balkanize on their own at some point under stress. Hair 2, thanks for all you do. Love catching the live stream. Clank. Say there's Massey. Next news story, we have Jussie Smollett, 5 or 6 or 7.0 at this point. New York City Council member Eric Boettcher. Today, people who called themselves gays against groomers. This has been debunked. Vandalize the hallway outside our district office. We will not be cowed. We will not be silenced. We will continue to stand up against hate. We're going to stand up against gay people, in other words. Now, what was done is it looks like someone took a crayon, maybe. Yeah, definitely something that the average graffiti meister, there's a ring at the door. Just a second. It's probably a pack. All right, sorry about that. I got my incense in. Yes. I'm glad. The neighbor had it for several days, but she decided to bring it over. So that's pretty good. Anyway, this particular story is hilarious. The idea is someone took a crayon, or, well, crayons, it's in several colors, and wrote Bitcher on the walls at the district office for New York City Council Mayor Eric Botcher. Now, some people are asking, well, why would they say Bitcher? Doesn't mean it's because it's a play on the word botcher. So clearly the person writing it was aware of whose congressional office it was, council office it was. Now, here's the thing. First, please ask this. How many people do graffiti in crayon? That's my first question. Secondly, the Gays Against Groomer group actually confirmed that all of their members are in Arizona right now, so it wasn't them. Thirdly, how exactly does he come to the conclusion that it was that particular group? And fourthly, can I please see the surveillance footage? I have a feeling we're going to find out that New York City Council member Eric Botcher, or someone working with him as a staffer, or someone who has like a fucking BLM shirt on, was the one that did this. This is Jussie Smolletting. It's there's a 90% chance this is horse shit. There's a 90% chance that it's a false flag. We've seen it before. From Jewish students scrawling swastikas on their own doors to get attention in U.S. colleges, to people desecrating gravestones with like satanic imagery. It turns out to be some fucking priest or something. Over and over again, the average person doesn't involve themselves with this sort of thing. It's counterproductive. So if you're trying to make a political or a social message, you wouldn't do it. There's a risk of getting caught. So, if a person's not a little bit nuts, they're not going to do it either. The only impetus to doing this is to try to false flag for socio-political purposes. More than half the time, it turns out that the so-called hate crime or the so-called vandalism came from somebody who was adjacent directly, or even the party itself, to the party that was vandalized or had like the hate speech, like Jussie Smollett. Jussie Smollett claimed that a couple of MAGA hat-wearing goofballs carrying bleach and a noose beat him up, and said this is MAGA country. In the middle of the inner city, it's very likely to come across such supporters of Donald Trump, by the way, back in the middle of the 2010s. And that wasn't the case. It was a couple of disgruntled African immigrant actors that had worked with him that did that. He lied completely. He lied repeatedly. He got in very little trouble for this, by the way. The entire Democratic complex took him at face value and said that if you denied his story, that you were a conspiracy theorist. Kind of like the FBI is right now, according to the Twitter files. So I label this a false flag. I'm just going to claim it outright objectively. No, this was not Gays for Groomers. They've confirmed that there was no member of their organization even there in your fucking city at the time. It's impossible for that to be the case. Again, they probably would not have used crayon either. Sparky, what happens to the money collected by the West to rebuild Ukraine after Russia's victory? I don't think Russia will have a complete victory. They are having problems, to be clear. So are the Ukrainians. It's basically a stalemate situation. So why are we getting further involved? 10 years from now, we're still going to be sending like $10 billion a month to the Ukrainians? Yeah, that'll help a lot of people. Black Bull 77, who would be the Larry, Curly, and Moe of 2022? I think you get Jeff Tiedrick, Dash Dabrowski, and Mike Singleton. And definitely a lot of self-deprecating humor there, and everything they say is so fucking foolish. The Three-Eyed Raven. Best way to find out what a politician's voting record is? Found the YouTubing Alex Jones, Megyn Kelly interview. Daily listener since Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, too. Just look up their voting record, I guess. They make it a little bit opaque for a reason. The Great Scalzini. What was funnier, Harold Camping or 2012 Doomsday? 2012 Doomsday, I would say. It was bigger. More people were taking it seriously. Jebediah Kerman. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Next news story. Oh, this is a funny one, especially since Zelensky just literally visited the United States, the other day. No conclusive evidence Russia is behind Nord Stream attack. I seem to recall when Nord Stream 2 was blown up by explosives. I pointed out that there was no legitimate reason to believe that Russia did it. It was counterproductive. If you already control the spigot for the gas, you can use it as a bargaining chip. You can turn it on, you can turn it off, you can turn it to half pressure, you can do whatever you want. Why, therefore, would Russia do that unless it was for the purposes of basically poo-pooing all of Europe and saying, look, we don't even need the fucking gas. Fuck you and fuck yourselves where you're never getting gas again. Fuck yourselves. there was never a really compelling reason to believe that the Kremlin destroyed their own gas pipeline, again, because it never really made sense. It made more sense to assume sabotage, possibly by the United States, possibly by the Germans, to tell the truth, to exercise pressure over the rest of Europe, the British, possibly, and other groups, or possibly the Ukrainians, of course. They say, well, Russia's making money off this gas, but all we have to do is send a PT boat with a couple of remote charges and an underwater drone on it. We can probably take care of the problem. Of course, it was relatively shallowly buried in this particular location. A nation with reasonable military development would have been able to pull this off. And yet at the time, I recall this viscerally. A lot of people called me a Putin apologist for pointing out that it wasn't necessarily Russia that done it. Now we've got the British and other groups confirming this. There is no direct evidence tying Russia to this attack whatsoever. Who's been vindicated yet again, for belatedly, many, many months later, including by the uniparty globalists who would love to blame Russia for it. They would love to come out and say, look, we got the smoking gun. It was a Russian explosive. We found this piece of metal. It was clearly a Russian device. They scuttled their own gas rig in order to put pressure on Europe. They would love to have come out and say that, but that's not what happened. They have no evidence. It's possible that it was Russia. They just don't have any evidence for it. So unless you assume that Kremlin man bad, there's no more evidence for Putin pulling the trigger than for Winston Churchill's ghost doing the same thing. Let's see here. JD 1989, happy Saturnalia, Sticks. Excellent. Hang the tree upside down. John Hoyle, will the GOP Congress take any action to rein in the FBI's overreach? I hope so, but I'm not going to hold my breath. They've got a very narrow majority. They're going to have McCarthy presumptively as speaker, and he's a neocon, basically. We'll see what they do. It's possible, but I won't hold my breath. Anishi Kihaku, can you shout out Make Your Own Channel? Google censored the application name. Graham, I censored libertarian contents and meme there. Okay, so at Make Your Own Channel. And it's been censored, I suppose, by Google. So yeah, Russia may have done the Nord Stream blowing, but as I pointed out, there's no evidence of it. Probably because it wasn't them. I have a feeling it was the British or the Germans, in all honesty. Probably the Germans, because Russia was using it as leverage. And the Germans didn't want that to continue. They want to be the ones making the big kahuna decision over the flow of energy into Europe, because basically the EU is nothing more than Nazi Germany 2.0, and the Germans have a big seat at the table for a reason over that. They want to oppress the rest of Europe. Old habits die hard, Next, we've got President Donald J. Trump, Biden's border crisis. This is a clip from Donald Trump's own Rumble channel. You should watch it. And this is basically number 2 in his campaign platform. So the first one had to do with tech censorship, and that one really knocked it out of the park. That was days ago. I talked about it at the time. It was paired with the release of his NFTs, which did net him 4.5 million big ones. Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly, if you're going to fail, that's definitely the way to fail, making, an entire lifetime's money in a couple of hours, just to be clear. Not bad. Now he's got platform number 2, or rather plank number 2 in his platform. And this is on immigration. It is effectively the same as his 2016 message. I mean, it's important. I'm glad to see him reiterate, we need to secure the border. We were deporting a bunch of people. We had, things in place that were compensating for illegal immigration. Biden has effectively abandoned them. He ticks all the marks here. And it is a big crisis. I think the border crisis will be creeping more and more into public consciousness because the situation has been worsening steadily. Even the legacy media is now sporadically reporting on it. They can't really hide the fact that the border's fucked. My problem with this is that there's nothing particularly novel in his message. It hits all the marks, but it doesn't really elaborate further. I would have liked to have seen him focus more on wall building. He could, by the way, this would be a master move, dovetail this in with the Omnibus bill. Congress is sending $45 billion to the Ukrainians right now. For less than that, we could easily fortify hundreds and hundreds of miles of border. With $5 billion, I was able to erect what was it, 350 miles or something of barrier. If we just increase that to 50 billion, slightly more than we're giving to Ukraine just through September, we could secure the entire southern border. There'd be no more vehicle barriers. There'd be no more non-barrier locations. We could also hire a bunch of extra ICE agents and put up more outposts and monitoring systems. It would be impassable, fundamentally, compared to the border that exists now. He should put this forward and say, look, I had to fight my own party for 2 years to get 5 billion. Now they're rolling over to give 45 billion to a foreign nation while we're in a recession. That's what he should do. He needs to get a little bit tougher. I like the more presidential tone that these are striking. That part's good. He hits all the marks fundamentally. That's good too. Elaborate. Go further than you're. If anything, Donald Trump being too restrained in this particular message, which is the surprising part. The Grizzly, what is your favorite thing to do on Christmas, and what new traditions would you like for other people to adopt? I like the food. Honestly, most holidays boil down to gorge yourself. St. Paddy's Day, ham, boiled cabbage, the whole 9 yards. Christmas, you get a nice ham going. Some people do turkey. I always associate turkey with Thanksgiving. Of course, we had chicken this Thanksgiving instead of turkey. Still good, by the way. I'll be making my famous squishy squash, roasted potatoes, cranberry sauce, etc., etc. Liz will handle the ham. Trust me, if it's something like that, like down-home food, you want Liz to cook it. If it's something ethnic or just a side dish, especially one like squash, kind of a New England treat, you want me to cook. We have our own fortes within cooking. She made a ham one time. Oh, God, it was literally the ham would fall apart if you just touched it. It was so tender. Don't even get me started on the roast chicken. Aussie's Robots. Historically, the government has always discriminated against certain people, but in this period, they've convinced masses to hate themselves. Countries, citizens, give up freedoms, yet protect other countries. They've been doing that since the W days. Well, technically, they've been doing that all along, but it's picked up lately. Next, we have the rise of the DeSantis Democrats. I just want to debunk this. Again, disclaimer. I'm not anti-DeSantis. I do not think he is an astroturfer. I don't think that he is a shill. I think that there are other people that are trying to elevate him to be a potential primary opponent to Trump, to set the stage for plausible deniability in the general when Trump likely wins anyway, although they would hope to stop him altogether, in order to try to either get a controlled DeSantis, because they would have funded him against Trump, or an embattled Trump who then loses so they can say, well, the Republicans never solidified behind him. I believe there are shenanigans afoot. I do not believe that Ron DeSantis is the linchpin of the plan. I'm hoping he sits it out and is wise enough to do that. Take on a running mate spot with Donald Trump and your future is assured if you really want to be in an executive position. I think it'd be a little bit difficult for them to defeat that particular matchup because then it clears the field. There is nothing else to goddamn oppose Trump and DeSantis at that point. I would like to point something out, though. The rise of the DeSantis Democrats. I'm just going to read the first couple sentences. Like Reagan Democrats, once upon a time, these voters have already reshaped the political landscape in Florida. Can they do the same nationally in 2024? That's interesting. You skip straight from Ronald Reagan to Ron DeSantis. There's an insinuation there, by the way. What was it in 2016 that I remember? I recall hearing something about Trump Democrats. Oh, that's right. That's why he won Pennsylvania and smashed it out of the park in the Rust Belt with Michigan and other states up there. The fact is that these are MAGA Democrats. These are union Dems, white mainly, working and middle class. They've been left behind by the bullshit socialism of the Democratic Party, and they're begging the Republicans to give them a reason to vote Republican. This is several million people. Now, what happened in the last election? You think the Uniparty gave them a reason to vote for them? They abandoned Pennsylvania. They elected John Fetterman, a man with literal brain damage, because the Uniparty abandoned Mehmet Oz for being a MAGA candidate. Not a principled one. Not one that I would have liked voting for, but he was Trump endorsed. This is the Trump Democrats, not the DeSantis. Now, look at the goddamn astroturfing here. They completely bypassed Donald Trump's win, huge win, with these particular voters in that particular vulnerable swing state heavy part of the country, just to avoid the big elephant in the room question, which is which one would do better with these individuals? Trump, who they voted for in 2016 and many remained in 2020, or Ron DeSantis, someone who is very beloved in Florida. He knocked it out of the park there. He's doing a good job. But he doesn't have that level of support in other parts of the country. DeSantis has disproportionate support in 3 places: Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas, and that's goddamn it. Well, Florida is already becoming a red state. That's probably off the table no matter who the Republican candidate is. Georgia, that's admittedly very important. Yeah, DeSantis carrying it over by a few points there would definitely be very, very good. The Carolinas, it depends on which Carolina. South Carolina leans red. North Carolina is basically a swing state too. I'd point out that Trump basically came out 50-50 here too. This is an astroturf. The legacy media wants to poo-poo and namby-pamby Ron DeSantis to try to groom him for a primary run. Because if anyone else primaries Trump, they lose. They cannot structurally win. And if Trump, by the way, manages to get DeSantis aboard or get him to declare that he's not going to run, Trump has won. That is it. There is no more struggle to have. There won't be debates. Half the states will cancel their primaries. There won't be a battle. There won't be an uphill struggle for Donald Trump or for MAGA. Sparky, was UK at behest of US blowing Nord Stream 2? Definitely not Germany. Stop reliance on legacy media. Why do you say it's definitely not Germany? We don't have evidence of who did it. There are multiple reasons to believe the United States would want to. It's true. The British, maybe on their behalf, maybe on their own, by the way. There are reasons Germany would want to stop that. They would want to be able to control more of the energy resources and structure that themselves because they're imperialistic. Yes, the German government never left behind the authoritarianism, much like China left behind hardline leftoid economics, at least in the facade sense. They never left behind the authoritarianism. Has Germany ever left behind their authoritarianism? What happens after the Nazis are gone? What happened in East Germany? Oh yeah, the KGB, the commies running things. That spends several decades operating. Look at the German police and their particular reputation if you want an indicator. Merkel's an authoritarian. Their current leader's an authoritarian. Bunch of moralists, bunch of fiscal authoritarians that want to micromanage everything, German style. It's just sort of the way that things are there. Musings of a Witch's Path. As adults, we still put cookies out for Santa. He is the personification of the spirit of the season, to be kinder to each other. We believe that is what makes him real, a spirit worth feeding. Up Gardner, happy holidays, and to you too. Anishi Kihaku, been following you for years. Thanks for doing what you do, Sticks. Gonna cover Kerry Lake. 42.5% of the ballots came back, and I can't repeat that last word on YouTube. Yes, it's a big problem, and it'll probably be tomorrow's exclusive. Again, I can't make a YouTube video on that particular topic. Mr. Wonderful. I watched live on YouTube as the NG was deployed in El Paso to halt the flow, only to see the gate open behind them. Who made that call? I don't know. I haven't seen that. Sparky, Georgia is controlled by never Trump Republicans. Not at the local level. It doesn't seem so. BW, hey Sticks, what's all this going on? The ruinous spending. Do you think we are going to make us pay reparations soon? Also, do you think we will ever win? It's always darkest before dawn. Don't get blackpilled. We're already winning the culture war against the far leftoids. They're taking attrition from far more than just right-wingers and evil libertarians now. They're taking attrition from liberals at this point, so I wouldn't worry too much. As for reparations, they can fuck themselves. By the way, please don't send any more super chats. We're going up towards an hour, and I still have one last topic to cover. Virgil Walker, who do you think will leave the EU next? I don't know. Maybe Italy. Sparky, what about Liz Truss's text to Blinken? It's done. No, I don't give a shit about Liz Truss. I was there for, what, 2 weeks in power? Pepe Payne, biggest problem. People, I don't trust mainstream media. Also people, mainstream media said this or that. We have to question all and trust no one. Not even yourself. And then the last news story is just a throwaway. This one's just for fun, shits and giggles. Avatar 2, guilty of cultural appropriation, film critic claims in ridiculed tweet. By the way, you're using Twitter to post that kind of hot take. Film critic Kathia Woods offered what many called an offensive and racist take on Twitter Sunday night by claiming that the Avatar film series is an example of cultural appropriation. Avatar, The Way of Water, the long-awaited sequel to James Cameron's 2009 film Avatar, officially hit theaters on Friday and blah, blah, blah. And it's talking about, here's the actual tweet. At some point, we got to talk about the cultural appropriation of Avatar, and white actors are cosplaying as POC. It's just a mess and so not necessary, and no amount of visual effects and CGI is going to erase that. Bad lace fronts, dry synthetic braids, Jesus, fix it, Woods tweeted. And here's the problem. Avatar generally doesn't display humans. They are roughly humanoid characters that happen to be blue-skinned aliens. I don't give a fucking shit who portrays them. Here's what I would say about Avatar. I watched the first Avatar movie long ago. I was in college at the time, and I watched it with my roommate at the time. It was pretty good. I mean, for its era, the CGI, it was very good. Some people didn't like the environmental wokeness side of it. The sort of the natives are spiritual and the invaders are like obsessed with electronics and tech and military stuff. It could be rankling to some people. If you don't interpret it that way, it basically falls into the same category as Fern Gully, which I also like as a movie. Yes, I am aware. A lot of the stuff that I watched as a kid was literally environmentalist propaganda. Fern Gully, to an extension, The Brave Little Toaster. You think about materialism, culture, junk, and stuff like that. Certainly Captain Planet, which was one of my favorite series as a kid. I had some of the toys. I wish I'd kept them because they were kind of funny. I used to have one of the Captain Planet rings. You know, they used to have like little rings and shit. You could get, you collected the cereal box tabs and then you sent them in and you get like a ring or a necklace or something. I had that and I lost it one time when I was on the playground. I was really bummed about that. Probably worth a fortune by now or some shit like that. Anyway, I had the Captain Planet ring. It is basically, yes, it is Noble Savage, Raphael Mariclo. That's the term for it. But they're not human. The characters here are aliens, specifically. They just happen to be humanoid. You know, it's easier to render humanoid aliens than it is, you know, space amoebas or something like that. It's harder to get an actor that has 20 arms than it is one who is human and can be hooked up to the CGI machine, and then you just render them and stuff like that. That's the reason why. I'm probably not going to watch the new Avatar, even though I did generally enjoy the first one. Again, preachiness occasionally aside. I just have no interest in that kind of movie. I don't give a shit who plays the characters. I don't care if there is or is not cultural appropriation because it's a fiction film. It doesn't even take place on Earth. It takes place on planet bullshit or something like that. Who gives a fucking shit? People have thin skin. They don't even realize, by the way, when they post shit like this, that they're self-owning. Even liberals hate you. Just to be clear about Wood's tweet. Josh, tell leftoids white men discovered oxygen. Yeah, if you look at the periodic table and the discovery, the country of birth of the people that discovered the periodic elements, yeah, it's a little bit one-sided. BW, hope Elon puts free speech in charge at Twitter or he wasted his money. He will, but it might be many, many moons before Elon Musk steps down as CEO. He'll still own the company, though, so he's still in charge. It'll be a puppet for him. Sparky, Liz was referring to the destruction of Nord Stream 2 in her text to Blinken. Prove it would be my particular response to that. It's possible. I'm not your buddy, guy. I'm a bit late, but please cover Kerry Lake. The testimonies during the trial yesterday prove the election was honk honk. Not allowed to say the last word there. You can read it for yourself. I will cover that in a very frank New Tech exclusive tomorrow. If you want to see that, you should follow me on some combination of Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey, or Minds. Unfortunately, YouTube is still heavily censored. They do not allow us to tell the honest and objective observable truth about certain topics, although they keep changing their mind, like with the medical policy. Part of it's been parsed back, part of it's still there, or something. I'm not even sure at this point. I don't even know what the rules are. It's really convenient for people who want to censor and screw you. Please, no more super chats, though. I do have to go off here in a minute. Musically assured destruction. That's about all. Peace out. I'll be saying that in a minute. OTAS85. Merry Christmas, sticks. Enjoy your rib roast and Yorkshire pudding. Now, we're going to have a nice glazed ham and my special extra sweet squishy squash, which I do make like a master, by the way. Roasted potatoes, of course. Cranberry sauce. Have some greens, maybe a nice salad on the side. Deviled eggs. Oh, boy, those come to mind for a Christmas feast. There will be a lot of food. Now we're just hoping that some other people come over to help us eat it, or else the entire refrigerator will be full. By the way, refrigerators in Europe, massively smaller than those in the United States. It's a big problem when you also have a kid. It's like, I'm not going to cook a half a cup of rice, dude, just so that we don't have leftovers. It's like, I'd rather cook normal portions. There's nowhere to put it. What am I supposed to do? Anyway, I'm going to go offline here. I thank you to the over almost 4,500 people that have watched the live stream. Don't worry, tomorrow I'll do a live stream too. I will probably not on Saturday, although I may do a Christmas Day live stream because, you know, some people get lonely on the holidays. You know, you're away from home, you're on military tour, you're a diplomat, your parents died or something. You're just, you know, you dwell in the basement or something and you don't have any social contact. Don't worry, I got your ass covered. Church in Scotland, missing movies like West Side Story. I didn't like West Side Story, to tell the truth. Yeah. Seen it in play form. That was a little bit better, I think. That's about all. Peace out.